What's up guys, welcome back. With the second week of horrific visions upon us, we are now in Orgrimmar, have 3 new masks to play with, have 4 new talent points to put in the tree, have 80% sanity drain resistance, and an entirely different dynamic this week in our 8 mask runs than we saw last week in the 5 mask runs. Last week players were up against a timer like we've never seen in Visions before. Congrats and well done to anybody that managed their 5 mask runs before the end of last week. But this week's actually a little bit different. We're able to take things a little bit slower. The Mask of the Nemesis spawns an elite mob, Gammon in this case, after defeating 25 mobs of any kind throughout the vision, and players benefit from our Elite Extermination perk, which gives you 50, 100, or 150 sanity return every time you defeat an elite enemy. This gives us so much extra sanity that you're really able to take your time, pull mobs 1 pack at a time, be methodical, and thank goodness for that, because it is a minefield of hell and destruction. I would pack your sense of humor and crowd control abilities for this week. I do have a couple of 8 mask runs on the channel already, Ret Paladin and Havoc Demon Hunter. You can find those, or the entire Horrific Visions Revisited playlist linked in the description below. But given that the bosses are new to a lot of players, beefier than last week, and have some untelegraphed or not super obvious mechanics, we're doing a video just on the biggins. Before we get started, be sure to sub to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can catch the next video as soon as it comes out. And let me know in the comments what you think of this video or of Visions so far. Personally, I'm a sucker for any solo progression content, but I do want to know what you guys think of it so far. So we'll tackle these bosses in the order that I run my visions. I head straight to the Valley of Wisdom. That means the first big boy we encounter is Decimator Shiq'voth. He only has 2 abilities. Surging Fist, which is just a charge at the player. He can knock you back if he hits you with this. This does no sanity damage, but will knock you back, potentially putting you out of position for his follow-up ability, which is Decimator. Decimator is just a boomerang of sanity damage. Dodging it on the way out is pretty simple. Be careful, the Decimator can definitely hit you on the way back. And just be careful of the 2 madness effects we have active. Scorched Feet will launch you in the direction that you're moving, but only after your feet are visibly on fire. And Entomophobia will cause you to auto-run if you let 5 bugs build up on your face. You can just jump to remove the bugs, and this can be done safely even if you have an active hot foot. If you have an active hot foot, I would sit on it until you have a Decimator or the boss coming at you, and then move left or right, whichever side has more room, to launch yourself even further out of danger. Launching yourself with hot foot does not get rid of your face bugs. If you're right next to the boss after he charges you, just move to the opposite side that he throws his Decimator. If you're a good distance away from the boss after the charge, I would stay at ranged, wait for the Decimator to go out, sidestep it, and then let it go back towards him. It does not have a very far range, and you'd essentially dodge the toss and boomerang effect at the same time. Once you're in the Valley of Wisdom, clear everything in the path in front of you and anything near the Voidcrazed Hulk. I would go fight this guy first, as you want to have as much sanity as you possibly can. The reason for this is he has a low cooldown, non-telegraphed toss ability that will just throw the player and eat 150 sanity from them. There's very little you can do about this other than not being in melee range when he's ready to queue up the ability, and then staying out of melee range until he howls in pain, at which point you'll have a couple seconds to get some good damage on him, and then run away again lest you get tossed. For any bosses in the Valley of Wisdom and the Valley of Honor, I would recommend not pulling them until just after a split personality proc, giving you the most time possible before the next one comes up. I would definitely Bloodluster Drums on this boss. I would plan on getting tossed at least once if you're melee. Ranged have a little bit easier time. Just make sure you're using those moments when he's howling in pain to get a little bit more distance from him. Even though this is just the second mid-boss you're fighting in the entire vision, don't be afraid if you have to drop an orb right after. The other mid-boss in Valley of Wisdom is the Coagulated Horror. This is just a big creepy crawly that spits either a circle on the ground or a bunch of circles on the ground. Both will be targeted at you. Just move left or right as they're coming out and you'll dodge them just fine. And of course try to bait your split personality to activate before you pull the boss, to give yourself the most time possible to dodge these sanity drains without your split personality catching up to you and making that more of a problem than it needs to be. Casters, just keep max distance from him and move left or right as needed. For melee, just run a circle around him as you DPS him. The only difficulty comes when you get a bad split personality overlap or if you're waiting for him to start casting before you start moving. And that'll bring us to Vez'okk the Lightless, the final boss in the Valley of Wisdom. This guy has 3 attacks and will also summon creepy crawlies that you either want to AoE down quickly or burn the boss extremely fast and deal with them after. The first thing you'll see from him is Defiled Ground. This is a medium width frontal line attack that will stun you if you get hit, as well as do a bunch of sanity damage and leave you open to getting comboed and shut your run down pretty quickly. It will also leave a line of void stuff on the ground that will do sanity damage if you stand in it, just like the burn bridge leftovers. Then he has Unleash Corruption, which will spawn a spot under you in another random area. The next cast will spawn 3 areas, the one after that will cast 4. I've not seen 5, but it probably does 5. Not very difficult to dodge if you can see it, though it can be covered up by little spawny boys, the boss himself, or other boss graphics, such as the Ring of Chaos, which is his 3rd attack. The Ring of Chaos summons a ring around him, which will do insane sanity damage to you should you get hit by it. In my opinion, the best way to counter Ring of Chaos, even if you're a ranged player, is to stay within melee range of the boss, as they spawn around his hitbox and then launch themselves away from the boss. They don't leave anything extra on the ground, but just be careful because you're going to get Defiled Ground, Unleash Corruption, then a Ring of Chaos, Unleash Corruption, Defiled Ground, all in short order. And for this boss in particular, your little Fear Circle man from Haunting Shadows is a little bit more difficult to see. I would recommend circle strafing around the boss, but also in an outward spiral motion so that you can avoid the stuff that you put on the ground from your own Burn Bridge Mask or the boss's Defiled Ground cast. That's it for the Valley of Wisdom. We're headed to Valley of Spirits for a little bit of a breather. We only have the final boss left, which is probably the easiest final boss of any Vision Zone. And just a quick tip for before you pull that final boss, I like to deal with the enemy pack just before this boss, before I cleanse that final totem, so that I don't do anything weird like accidentally pull the boss with the bad hot foot jump or an accidental Intima proc. So the Oblivion Elemental only has 2 things it actually does. It will cast Hopelessness, which rips a golden orb from the player and keeps them silenced until the player collects that golden orb on the ground by running over it. You can super duper scam this Hopelessness mechanic. If you stand next to a wall, or on top of a mailbox or another structure, or in between the cacti, that orb won't actually have a path to go anywhere. So it'll just appear under your feet or very close to you, making it a very easy task to pick it back up. If you didn't get good positioning and you can't find the orb, check underneath the boss. It does kind of blend in with his targeting circle at times. And if you're blocked off from getting your orb from the purple waves that drain 300 sanity and stun you, so you're absolutely going to get hit by another wave, you can just wait out this timer and things go back to normal. You can also pre-immune this effect with AMS, Bubble, Ice Block, probably Cloak of Shadows. You might even be able to PvP trinket this. And due to the crashing waves all converging in that purple path, but try not to get too far away. When you're about 30 or 40 yards away from the boss's spawn, that's where those waves start to coalesce and they can just kind of spawn on you, stunning you before you even have time to react. So if you're going to stay away, stay 20-25 yards away from that boss's spawn location, dodging waves as best you can, and getting next to or on top of a structure for when that Hopelessness cast goes out. Next to the fences and amongst the cacti are your best bets there. Once you make your way into the drag, you can have 1 pack of mobs in front of the next mid-boss. This guy's not very tough, but the cramped space can make it a little difficult if you're not prepared. Annihilator Lak'hal will drop Orbs of Annihilation, which will spawn in a giant purple consecration-sized area. This will do a bunch of sanity damage. Make sure you're on the move when this is getting cast and it will not be under you. It will then spawn a few more times as it makes its way outward from boss. Don't run past the boss as there's a pack of mobs right behind him. He will also follow this up with Dark Ray, which will do repeated sanity damage and then push you back. Make sure you don't get hit by this and pushed back into the orb he cast just previous, as it will still be making its way out and you'll be pushed very quickly back. I prefer pulling boss back to that tiled area where you fought that first pack, and then either running circles around the boss or dodging left for the orb, and then making my way back to the right when he queues up the Dark Ray. Just make sure you're not purely running toward or away from the boss. You want to have lateral movement so that he aims the orb in one direction and then the Dark Ray in another direction. And once he's picked a direction for Dark Ray, you are good to move. He's not going to track you with it after that. And as this is a lesser zone, we only have 1 more boss before we're finally into the Valley of Honor. This is Inquisitor. He has a name, I don't know how to pronounce it. His primary attack is a Void Torrent, which tracks the player for the duration of the channel. And since it tracks the player, you're going to run circles around him. Now, if you really want to put this guy in the observer's chair, you know, the one that every hotel room has, you can actually block the volley using this tree stump. Now, I would be careful because at times you can still get hit through this, and you want to make sure not to pollute that ground with your burn to bridge affix right before you do this. But if you hug up against the tree on the opposite side of him, it will just kind of go into the tree and either split around it or just stop in front of it. Now you got to be very careful not to jump if you get a bug face proc during this, because it will just hit you above the stump line, or if he's very close to the stump and he's at a higher elevation than you, he will then of course have the high ground, and we all know how that works out. I've only managed to mess this up twice out of a dozen or more times, but the extra fun part about this is that you can cast fully on him regardless of where he and you are with the stump between you. It doesn't line of sight you in any fashion. You cannot otherwise line of sight this ability. He'll simply run around the corner and restart the channel. His second ability is to shield himself and then explode if you don't break that shield. This explosion of course does sanity damage. It's not the end of the world if you get hit by this one. It's not going to stun you, it just does damage once, and he seems to do it at health percentages. If I had to guess, 75 and 25%. With good damage you'll probably push him past the first or second Void Torrent into his explosion cast, and good to know that you can line of sight the explosion inside of, say, the engineer area, and you cannot use the tree stump to line of sight the explosion. This brings us to Valley of Honor. First boss in Valley of Honor is Misha the Bear. Absolutely proc your split personality before you pull this bear. First thing he'll do is vomit a disease on you, which is great. It doesn't do any sanity damage, but I would dispel it if you're capable of dispelling disease. It does slow you, making the follow-up mechanic a little bit more difficult to avoid. And that follow-up mechanic is Maddening Roar, which will incapacitate you and do a bunch of sanity damage. 1 or 2 seconds after the vomit, I would just start backing away so you don't have to deal with a potential split personality overlap. This won't happen on the first round of abilities if you pre-proc your split personality, but if you've gone through a second or heaven forbid a third cycle, that's a very big problem that you might have to deal with, especially if you get incapped into a split personality, into a Haunting Shadows that causes you to run into the pack behind the bear, pulling it, and causing all sorts of problems. So mind the bear. After you defeat Misha, 4 scarabs will spawn on its corpse. I would start backing even further down that hallway. Once they get low health, they'll do Ruptured Carapace, which will do a bunch of damage, then chain you into the remaining Ruptured Carapace attacks, which will likely end your run right there. And since this is a lost area, we have a second mid-boss. This is the Aqir Mindhunter. Yes, you're going to pre-proc your split personality so you don't get it right away on the fight, but also you want to make sure you are running over the corpses in the immediate area. Either all or most of the NPC corpses in this area will spawn a scarab, which again at low health do a Ruptured Carapace attack. The Mindhunter does 2 things. Its Toxic Breath is a frontal that queues up that you can then dodge. If you get hit by this, you'll get 1 stack of a poison. If you get 5 stacks of this poison, you will be stunned. This is a very good reason to pull it solo and not with any swarmers from the previous pack, as those swarmers do the same poison effect, and if the boss is up and you get poison stunned, it's going to do its next ability, which is a Ground Spit, and you will not be able to dodge it since you are stunned, and it will kill you. And in fact, if you pre-position yourself next to this piece of fence or other similar structure, you can bait all of those swirlies into that same area. If you don't have a poison dispel, you want to make sure you are dodging at least every other Toxic Breath so you don't get 5 applications of that poison. And if you're kind of low geared and don't have a self-heal or a defensive and you have multiple stacks, that poison can actually take you out over time. Okay, Rexxar. Rexxar might have the most complaints out of any Vision boss, but you can actually pace this fight out to be pretty player friendly, or at least just a whole heck of a lot friendlier than it can be if you just try to burst him down super quickly. When you pull him, Rexxar will put 3 traps on the ground. These traps will stun you and do a bunch of sanity damage. He has 4 boars, and he summons these at health percentages. And every time he does summon a boar, it will charge you and knock you in the opposite direction. Do be careful, you can reset Rexxar if you're knocked out of the area and he follows you. Even without that, the knockback can be pretty hellish. And they'll follow that charge up with Void Quills. Void Quills does 90 sanity damage, so you want to do your best to make sure that this doesn't get cast at all. He'll summon his first boar after you've gotten him to 85% health. So right after that charge, you want to make sure you're kicking that Void Quills. And then I would just tickle the boss until your interrupt is back up. At 70%, you'll get the second boar, knock you back, and start casting Void Quills. Stun it, disorient it, do something, but kill it ASAP. And then at 55%, he is going to summon his final 2 boars, which will both charge you, both knock you back, and both start casting Void Quills. I would rip all of your CDs once you hit 60% so you can be blasting when they come out. Hit them with a kick and then a single target CC or an AoE CC and then burn them down before they get too much uptime on you. You can certainly take a cast, but if you're doing an 8 mask run, you definitely can't take more than 2. And you just want to make sure that you're not getting knocked into the traps as well, or into your split personality or haunting shadows effects. When those last 2 boars come out, he's going to cast a stampede effect. These things will just slowly crawl over the combat area in one direction in several rows. They're not a mob, they don't have aggro, they will just crawl across the area and mess your day up if you get hit by them. Alright, so you've got all the zone bosses down, and we only have Thrall left. Thrall is a bit of a big boy. If you have multiple orbs left, drop 1 and then pull boss and the 2 boars immediately. If they get any casts off, you'll just recover that insanity from the orb that you're sitting in. And if you only have 1 orb left and you have relatively high sanity, you could probably save it for a little bit later into the fight. I would plan on taking at least 90 sanity damage throughout the fight. You want to always keep your eye on Thrall. He will cast Defile Ground far more than any other ability, and it's not even consistent when it comes to when it overlaps with those other abilities. Take those initial boars out as fast as you can. Be moving as you do it, because he will queue up that first Defile Ground pretty quickly. And just like the boss in Valley of Wisdom, that Defile Ground will leave stuff on the ground. His next most frequent ability is Surging Darkness. He'll jump in the middle and explode either the middle circle or the outside perimeter, or the outside perimeter, then the middle circle. And keep your eye on Thrall when you're dodging in and out of the circle and perimeter effect. That Defile Ground's going to come out, and then your run's over. You'll be stunned, you'll be hit by the second half of the Surging Darkness effect. If you get hit by any of these big sanity attacks, just drop your orb and stay in it as best you can while continuing to dodge the remainder of the attacks. At 55%, Thrall will cast Cries of the Void. He only casts this once throughout the whole encounter. It does 90 sanity damage. This is the explosion attack that goes off if you don't break his absorb shield. That shield's actually pretty difficult to break unless you're geared or have coolies for it. Honestly, it only happens once. It only drains 90 sanity. I just eat this attack and save cooldowns and resources for the remainder of the fight. Thrall will also cast Hopelessness. This is the ability where it pulls that golden orb from the player and silences them until they pick it back up by walking over it. This seems to be the lowest in his spell queue priority. So if you're blasting real good, you might not see this ability. I could be wrong on that. I do not see it very often, and I would not try too hard to wall this ability or get it into an area where you don't have to move far to pick it up, because that'll lead you open to a Defiled Ground if you're not paying close attention, or a Surge in Darkness. I would just let the ability go out, pick up your orb, and be on with your life. And once you have defeated Thrall, you have done it. You have been beyond the most horrific vision of Orgrimmar. Congratulations. Thanks for watching the video. If you're having any more trouble, hit me up in the comments. Thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you found this helpful. Like the video if you liked it. Share with any of your friends that are doing their visions. Good luck out there. Good luck next week when we get back into Stormwind. I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Peace.